Last class we wrapped up with selecting checkers, and we have these relatively ugly little selection boxes that pop up. I'm not a huge fan of the way that they monkey with the margin between the cells. You know, um, my goodness, Zoe, you look really tired today. Were you up late last night working on computer science homework? Oh, I'm so proud of you. For that, you get an umlaut. Um, oh man, well now you can have one over the e in your last name. It could be Hoikum, Zoe Hoikum. All right, cool. Awesome stuff. Okay, well, stay awake and but yeah, let's see if we can't fix this. Okay, today. There's lots of ways that we could do it. The one thing we could try is we could actually shrink the size of the cell before we add the. And let me actually make this. Let me embiggen it a little bit so we can see these a little better.
Bigger is better.
So when you inspect a cell, down at the bottom in the developer tools, there's the box model, right? And it gives you an idea of what the different parts of the cell are. So the blue is the content of, and when I say cell, I'm talking about an element. In this case, the cell is a div, right? A div element. So the blue is the contents. The green is the padding. Now this one doesn't have any padding. Okay, the cell doesn't have padding. The whatever yellowish color is border, and then the orangish color is margin. So let's do it on this guy right here, actually. And if we hover over the border, then we should see it's very difficult to tell because it's already yellow, but you can kind of see it gets highlighted. So the thing is, the border takes up space. Like it takes up real space. And when you think about how wide and how big an element is, it's the size of the element itself plus its border. Or a lot of times people think about the size of the content as the size of what an element is. But it's really the content plus the padding plus the border. Okay, the margin is not included, and margins can margins get a little bit wonky, but what you actually see, is everything inside there. So one of the things we could do is we could, let me see, how big did we make that selected? Let's see, this guy, right? Oh, I selected a black checker. So let me actually inspect, not the black checker, but the div itself. Okay, so and that's where you can really see there. You see the border popping up. All right. Wow, big stuff. But if I turn this border off, obviously things go back to the size they need to be. And this border is 1 pixel. Okay. So if we could change the size of the cell, then maybe things look better. So let's say if we made this cell a width of, instead of 8 VW, maybe we made it, let's just say 7 VW, which makes it a little squished. But that's actually cell proper. We don't want it. That changes every cell. So because this is the cell. Okay, I'm changing the actual cell style. So not the style for this particular cell. So I'd actually want to change that in here. So when something gets selected, I want to. Okay, get my. There we go. Have a width of, let's say, 7 VW. All right, you can see how it gets shortened, and a height of 7 VW, right? And so now it's, and then let's give this a pixel, a width or a size of 1% of the view width. All right, so maybe a little bigger than what we need it to be. But you see, we're and that seems to be a lot more than 1% of the view width. But let's try. Can we do decimals in here?
Maybe it's like 1% of the entire thing. Is that it?
There we go.
The entire board.
That's interesting. So what if I made this 7.9 of the view width? That doesn't seem to change. Oh yeah, it did. 7.9.
Huh?
So no, it's still changing it. But you can see that's one strategy. Now, this is where we get into fiddling, right? You guys don't need to watch me fiddle on, but that's what that would be one strategy is shrink the size of the cell. Okay? All right. Another possibility would be to put an overlay over the cell. So let's say instead, like this div, this checker right here. Okay, if I gave this checker, right now it has a background image, right? Wow, that's like ding, 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 ding. Can we give it a background color, I wonder? Well, we could even overlay another cell on top of it, that would kind of highlight the whole cell. Okay, but let's try putting a background. I'm seriously like just winging it here. Alice blue. So that's if I turn the image off, okay. So those do well, they turn Alice blue, but then the background image, that background image covers over it, right? But if I wrap that in another, and then these guys have a background. The problem is that we want the background images, and so putting a div around it would would look like this. Let's try if I can get in here and edit this as HTML. Or let me just make the changes, this change in WebStorm. So in board.js, where we're actually rendering the cells, which is render row, render cell. Okay, so here we render a cell. And actually, I'm going to do it around the checker. So if I put that checker div inside of another div, okay, and I'll call it. Now the interesting thing here is this new div then becomes the checker's parent. Okay, so before, right, if I do this, save it.
Is it his father or his mother?
I'm not particularly sure. All right, save this and refresh it. All right. Remember when we're selecting an object, we say, or when we select a checker, we say, "That's funny. There's no checkers." I bet they're in there though. They are there. There's my checker.
They're hiding.
And it's inside a div, but this other div is really small.
Hello.
And hey,
Wait. Goodbye.
Bye.
see ya. All right. So this div has disappeared on our other div. That's because this guy's supposed to be making. Why you no worky? Why is it doing that? Any ideas, people? Come on. No? Oh, I know why. No. This div doesn't have any particular height or width, right?
Okay.
But the checker, right, object is setting its size based on the percentage of the of its parent object. So we replace this parent with this new div, okay? And the checkers div is 80% of its parents, right? So I imagine the checker, like the width is going to be the whole width, but the height of a div is just however high it needs to be, and it's constrained by what it contains, right? And what if so there's nothing making this thing bigger, so there's nothing making this particular div bigger, and the checker div is setting its size based on its parent's size. Okay, so in other words, if I said height 8 BW, okay, then it suddenly shows up, right? Because that's when one object sets its size off of another object, which is a perfectly valid thing to do. If you change the order of the objects, then you get some wonkiness like this. So really, what I want my height and my width to be 100%. Okay, that's because width of this object to be 100%. And because that'll just make it take up the whole space, inside that cell. Okay. So let's give this thing a style or a class. So its class will be, how about checker wrapper? Like, not wrapper, like, not like that. Yeah, so.
Checkers like wrapped like candy.
There you go. Wrap them like candy. So checker wrapper, and then we're going to go give checker wrapper some style over here in board.css. So dot checker wrapper, and it's going to get a height of
We can give the checker
100%.
wrapper some style.
That might have been the funniest joke you've made this whole year. So, yes. So, you know what we used to say in the Army? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So, yeah. Which you'll get. What's that? Let's do something else. The point being, if you make enough jokes, eventually one of them will be funny. So, all right, so back here and here and refresh. And it all renders. Okay, so we're good there. Now we've got one more guy to play with in here. We've got this wrapper that we can mess around with. And let's give that wrapper a background color. Okay, I don't even know which one I have selected. Background color. We'll go with Alice Blue because it's the first one in the list. All right, so there we go. We get this ugly Alice Blue thing. But again, you can see, if I did something RGB A, and maybe we do F, no, 255, 255, 255, 0.5, 0.5. Yeah. So that's how you get like a faded white, slightly white transparency, okay? Would be like that. And I'm not sure why we're shifted down a little bit. Is there padding on this upper black cell thing? Or so we'll have to fiddle around with that. But again, there's another solution, and I think I might actually like this solution the best because it can, we can really highlight the cell without monkeying with, anything around it. I kind of like the idea of a putting like a white like a translucent white background on there, because you're literally at that point highlighting it. I think 0.5 here is maybe a bit much. Probably something more like 0.25, or, well, that's maybe not quite enough. So, but it gets, clear enough that I've got, that this guy is selected. So, yeah, 33%. So, it's a third occluded. Okay. And it doesn't have to be white. It could be a different color from white. It could be, it could be black. It could be, yellow, pink, Alice blue. Okay.
Not Alice blue.
It's not Alice blue. So, and if you wanted to do black, you would just go in here and you'd say, instead of 255, 255, 255, you just say this is going to be 0, 0, 0. And so now it makes it's a low light instead of a highlight. So I like the highlight better. So, all right. So we might fiddle with that a little bit today. In fact, but again, you guys don't need to watch me fiddle. I'll let you guys fiddle on yours. So let's do that for the remainder of class. Yes, ma'am. No, you can work for the other 8% or that are left on your battery life. Zoe Hoecum died. This girl. There you go. There you go.
I've heard that there are some magic potions that you can use to bring it back to life.
It's called illusion.
See? Like I said, just keep trying. Every once in a while, it'll be funny. All right, so that handles how to select, and also how to. Let's go to how we're. We still have the other one. So let's actually code this up. That particular style there. So let me go back in here. The checker wrapper. So if it gets selected, we want instead of it having a border, we just want it to have a background color of RGBA 255, 255, 255, and 33%. All right, so let's see if that works. And when we select these, yep. All right, so we do need to fiddle and get it centered right, but and I feel like the color could be a little bit more pronounced. So, but again, we'll figure that out. Oh, one thing that'd be kind of nice is to put a border radius on it. Border radius 50%. So, man, I keep going to the wrong screen. Alt-Tab is messing me up. So it's still a little off-center, right? But that's going to give me a highlighted circle around it, which would be kind of nice, right? And I think might actually show up a little bit better than
It doesn't blend into the white one below it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why. What in the world is pushing this thing down? That's the weirdness of it. But I want to get to the more substantive pieces. So for now, we'll have ugly selections, okay? And we'll get on to That's the great thing about being a teacher. If I don't know how to do something, I can just assign it as homework. So all right. So we'll save that. And now let's go. We do have it, selecting, unselecting. But now if I click over here, I want to go ahead and like move my my thing there. So one thing that we figured that out the other day. All we have to do is change the row and the cell number, and then re-render the cells. So if we go into checker.js, and we can create a move checker. So we have select checker. So let's create another function, and we'll call it move
Function.
checker. Yeah. Oh, and actually, we're going to put this on black cells, right? On empty black cells. So if I select this checker and then I click in this space right here, then I want to move a checker from somewhere else to what I just clicked on. Does that make sense? Okay. So instead of move checker, we're actually going to call it move checker here. Okay. And in that case, when we think about it, what we're really interacting with is part of the board, not a checker. So we're going to put this on board.js. That make sense? All right. So move checker here. That's definitely a judgment call because it also involves checkers. Okay. So, and in fact, we might even say move selected checker here. Okay. So first thing we do is what? We start logging things. Console.log things. Oh, and we need to put that on all the black cells. So here, dot black dot cell. So every black cell, if I click on it, then I want to move the selected checker here. And remember, if you have, autocomplete is going to add those parentheses. If you leave them there, it's not going to work for you. You got to get rid of, because we're not executing the method. We are telling it which method to execute when something happens. That makes sense? All right. So now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go see if I can log things. Awesome. There we go. Things. Now, one thing we don't really want is I don't want to move checkers here, right? So we don't want this method to execute if I click on a cell that's occupied. All right, and we'll figure that out. That's going to be it's actually not hard, but that's the more complex part of this. So first off, we'll say in board.js if selected checker log move checker here else. You guys ever watch really? That should be a great movie, great show. You watching have you guys ever watched A-Team? Mr. T, I Pity the Fool. Man, I'll tell you what. Select a checker. Fool. That's Mr. T for you. All right, so you know what? You guys need a little cultural education. Mr. T
We call it almost like the education.
All right. So here's Mr. T. Like literally, like that was his. You know, he's gotten a little older these days. But yeah, this is him, like what he looked like back in the A-team days. You know, and he was. I mean, he just. And this honestly was what he looked like in real life. Like they found, like he wasn't really acting on A-team. He was a bodyguard, or like a nightclub bouncer or something like that they found. You know, someone discovered him and were like, you don't have to act, just read the lines. You know, like he dressed this way, like yeah. So anyhow, yeah. So this was that was Mr. And but he was also in Rocky 3. You know, and but one of his most famous expressions is "I pity the fool." I pity the fool. That's what you know. Anyway, so there you go.
Thank you
so
for the cultural
hey,
education.
not a problem, not a problem. So I click here. Oh, first I need to refresh it. Yep, it's important to be you know, educated in culture, history. Yeah, that was the 80s. So there we go. Select a checker, fool. Now if I go select a checker, and then I click here, it says move checker here. So that is doing what it's supposed to do. All right, so because there's no point in trying to move a checker if we don't have a checker selected. So if we have a checker selected, then we want to say selected checker dot row. Now here's the thing. How do I know what my row number is, and how do I know what my cell number is?
You can use magic.
Magic. So, Expelliarmus. So let's just pick one, just to. This is 4-1. So row 4. Select a checker. Cell. Cell gets 1. And then what do we need to do? All right, so let's go over here, refresh it.
Right, that's what we said. Refresh the page.
And I select this checker, and then I click here, and
Nothing
nothing happens. What do I need now? But if I go look at selected checker, oh, that's select checker. Excuse me, selected checker. Look, it has a row 4 and cell 1. Okay, let me refresh this and show you guys that actually happened. All right, so first I'll type selected checker, which is undefined. And I'll click 1. Now let me go ahead and type selected checker again. Row 4, cell 1. Okay. Interestingly, that actually got set to row 4, cell 1 because as soon as we selected the checker, we also clicked the black cell. That makes sense. Okay. What do we need to do to move it? Render the checkers. Okay, because he's in 4-1, right? He's been moved to 4-1, but he is not been moved. So let's go in here and we'll say render checkers. Let's refresh the board, and now any checker we click should immediately go to cell 4-1. Of course, it's not going to get rid of the existing one. And of course, they're piling on top of each other. Like if I was to go inspect this cell. All right, so there's checker 13, 4-1. I was expecting to see more checkers in there, but maybe they are overwriting each other. I don't know. That's weird. What does checkers say? Let's go to our console. Or checkers. Expand that. Oh, because there's already one selected. I don't know. That's weird. But it doesn't matter. It's like we need to figure out why it's wrong right now. And the first thing we need to do is we need to clear the board, right? We need to clear the board because this checker is not really here anymore. It's been moved. So we first have to clear the board, but it's been moved in our data structure. It just hasn't been moved on the board. So we'll go in here, excuse me, and we need to clear the board, and that probably warrants its own function. Okay, clear board, and when we clear the board, what does that really mean?
Take the checkers off.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Yes, take the checkers off. Yes. Oh, thank you for the visual demonstration. So where are the checkers? They're on the board, sure. More specific. More specific.
In the black cell?
In the black cells.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we said, hey, black cells, the dot black dot cell dot HTML, right? So we're taking the inner HTML of that black cell, and you know what? Let's set it to nothing. Okay? I know. So we'll save that, and we'll come back over here and refresh this page. I just tested out. We don't even need to click anything. We should be able to just type clear board. Right? Okay? It just took all the inner HTML of all those black cells and just removed everything that was in them. Okay? So, and anytime we're rendering the cells, we probably want to clear the board, right? Anytime we're rendering the checkers, we probably want to clear the board, right? So rendering checkers, if I put a clear board right here and save it, refresh this guy. Ooh, wow. All right, what happens when I click this? Oh, it's because I think it's because there's still a checker selected. That's why. It's just selecting the same checker, because select checker checks to see if the checker's selected already, right? Select checker, remove class selected. I don't know. I have to figure out why that's not doing what we expect it to do. But the other thing we need to figure out is because we don't want this to move. We don't want to call move here when I click a checker, right? So that's one of our problems is when I click on that checker, I'm also calling move here because the checker is in a black cell. We only want move here to be the click listener on the cells that don't have checkers in them. Okay, and the trick to that, where is the place? Like, when do I know if a cell is going to have a checker in it? Okay, yes, but when does my JavaScript know? At what point is it it know like there is a checker in this cell.
When you say like render checkers, put the checker in.
Yes, when I put the checker in. Good job, Caleb. As soon as I put the checker in, I know there's a checker here, right? So if the first thing I do when I render checkers is add that click listener, right? Well, I've already added it to all of the cells, okay? But if instead I add it to all the cells at the beginning of render checkers, like I say, hey, all the black cells, if you click a black cell, you should move a checker there. But then, as soon as I put a checker in a cell, I say, now don't do that anymore. Just in this cell. Okay? So, let me show you what I mean, guys. In render checkers, if as soon as I render the checker, which is right here, right, I've got a handle to the cell because I know it's, like it's right here, this cell, right? And I'm setting the HTML for that cell, right? I can say, hey, you know what? That same cell, the click listener, should be, I think that will work if I just do that. Or I'll just say no. Yeah, undefined. All right, so
We achieved victory.
So let's see what happens. If, yeah, save that, go back over here, refresh this. So when I click the first cell, it shouldn't move, but it does. So I click it, it says move here, and then it renders the checkers. So
Well, here's the thing. Should and will are two different things.
Should and will are two different
It's
things.
kind of like it chooses to obey.
Right.
It should obey, but it didn't.
But it didn't. You're right. That's right.
Maybe that's why it wasn't
Which
working.
really just means the problem is not with the JavaScript.
Maybe it needs to.
You should just talk to the checker about its obedience.
Or maybe the checker is unregenerate and needs to be saved. Right?
You could bring it to
We have no
obedience
power
school.
over that, so basically there's nothing we can do.
There's nothing we can do. Especially if you believe in determinism as opposed to free will, right? Like then, like if you're a Calvinist, man, those checkers are done.
Or you
If you're an Arminius, they might have a free will. They might be able to make a choice and choose to get saved.
You could brainwash them to always do what you say,
Yeah,
and then the checkers will always obey you.
there you go. There you go. Well, robot checkers.
How about the
I think that's what I think.
JavaScript?
I think I have succeeded in brainwashing them, and I think the problem is that they are actually doing what I'm saying. So I probably should say I should be telling it not to move, but evidently I am. So we'll have to figure that out. I think it's going to have to roll over to the next class. Well, no, we still got about 10 minutes. So let's refresh this page and see what happens. One more time, slowly. So when I click on this cell here, it does call move checker here as soon as I clicked it, which means this is not doing what I want. By undefining the, oh, you know what? Let's go look at this in board.js. We render the checkers here. We render the checkers here. This is the same thing we ran into before. And then it's here that we add the click listeners. There wasn't a click listener to remove. So if I instead put this above rendering the checkers and refresh it. So before I render the checkers, I tell all the black cells, when someone clicks in you, move a checker there. And then while I'm rendering the checkers, I say, hey, by the way, you can't move something here because there's already something here. So I click this, and it still moves. Love it. Love it. So it's still doing its thing.
active. It wants to
Maybe
get
they
exercise.
really
I know.
Maybe all I need is to clean out their ears so they can hear you right. Bingo!
Clean out their ears.
When someone you can Right somewhere you been hit.
Yeah.
Did someone hit ransomware or something?
Clear the board.
You got hit by ransomware. Your very own ransomware. Just wait and see what comes back and bites you.
That'd be funny if someone got like their own virus on their computer.
All right, we're gonna try. I'm gonna try setting it just to the empty string and see what happens. It's still working, still doing. All right. Well, I'll have to fiddle with that and get it
You know, it's
fixed.
just very eager to move.
It is. It's excited.
Yeah.
For now, your assignment for this weekend and is to get a decent looking, not an ugly thing like I got here, a decent looking, selected indicator. Okay, you can do it any one of the ways that we specified. Okay, it can be a circle overlay behind
A
it.
triangle on top.
It could be a triangle on top if you wanted. That actually would be. That's another one that I didn't specify, but yeah, you could easily put, instead of a checker wrapper, you could have, a div inside all of the checkers, that you then, turn to a different color afterwards, and it would just be in the middle of the checker. So that's possible as well. I bet I know when I select one of these checkers, I bet I know. I bet it's how the checker is centered, or how the div is centered. I bet it's oriented to be at the bottom of the cell, like most words are like you know. So that's probably the problem. Anyway, so your assignment is to have a good-looking selected checker indicator, and to be able to, at least in a very broken way, get your checker to move from one place to the other. Okay? So when I click on a checker, I should be able.
So if you click on the checker, it falls apart, and then you move one part into another square.
If you
It's
can
moving
get
in a
something,
broken way.
get something to happen, right? But if you can actually get it working in a decent way, that would be awesome. Love to see that. But at a minimum, we want to get it moved to a different cell. Okay?
Cool.
All right. Well,
We can now move the checker.
yep, you guys have a couple of more minutes before class ends, so you can get started on this if you like. Okay, I wanted to go ahead and record another just quick tag-along video for the last one to show how I went ahead and resolved the border selection problem. So this is the one that I chose to use. There's like I said, there's certainly a couple ways you could do this, but I liked this one. So basically, what I did was, instead of putting the wrapper around, I went back to having a border on the cell itself. So let's go take a look at the changes that I made. First off, when I select a checker, instead of adding the selected class to the checker's parent, in which case would be the black cell, I actually just added that class to that checker, and then so when I select a checker, then that checker gets the selected class. And for the CSS, now this is a little bit complex, and I'll go through all the different pieces of it here in just a second. So, but I gave it a border of 0.8 VW, and I made it solid, well, sort of solid, and gave it this RGBA of, basically half white, background no repeat, and zero margin. So let's just go take a look at all of that real quick and what that does. So actually no need to refresh, even though I'm doing it. So let's go ahead and select a checker. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to deconstruct it, deconstruct that. My choices on that. So like I said, there's no more cell wrapper or checker wrapper in here. And let's just go to the selected class. So here's the selected class, and I'm just going to uncheck all of those things. So it should look just like a regular checker, okay? So the first thing that I did was I added this border around it. And actually, I'm gonna add a different border first. So I said, give it a border, and let me make it like 10 pixels, solid, well, Alice blue, right? Okay, so and that works, but the margin is pushing it down in this direction. Okay, so that doesn't work exactly. It's off. So if I gave it a margin of 0, okay, then at least my margin's starting in about the right place, but my border is just a little wider than it needs to be. I could fiddle with that, and go with like maybe 9 pixels or 8 pixels. Okay, and that's great. But as my screen width gets smaller, then my choice of the size is gets off. Okay, so instead of using pixels, I tried to use percentages. Okay, right. So if I wanted to just maybe be 10% of the width, so I get rid of the margin because the margin is typically 10%, right? See here, margin's 10%. So let's go with 10%. And I'm replacing it with 10% border. Problem is, percent is not supported as a border. CSS doesn't support using percentages as the width of a border. So when it would be great if it did, but when I replace that and I get rid of the 10% margin that's keeping this guy centered, and by putting margin 0, I need to do something. Well, I know that the whole cell is 8% of the view width, right? Or 8 VW. So if I go take a look then at that checker, well, what's 10% of 8? I know it's always going to be 8, so 0.8 VW. And there we go. And that is how I get. Now, one thing you might notice if you look really close, especially if we get on a much bigger screen, let me make this bigger. And instead of Alice blue, let me select well, let me just go back to this border that I had here that's a little bit transparent. If you look, you can see that there are checkers. The background is repeating, okay? And that's not what I want. I don't want the background to, I don't want to see, repeated background. So that's why this background no repeat, you add that, and it gets rid of that repeated, those other checkers that are popping in. Because it's basically it's centering the background and then trying to fill the space with the same background image, this image of the black stone. But we don't want that. We just want one background image, and that'll be it. Now you will notice that when we've got that max size that pops in here on the cell, it has a max height and a max width of 11 VW or VH. Well, so when I get really wide, right, then suddenly I start to come over a little bit, just a hair, and this isn't perfect. So it's still not perfect. In fact, I might be able to do it. It might be able to work if I use 8% of the V min. Would that work? 8% of V min. So, no, I don't think that would work. Maybe. V. Or is it V hyphen min? I can't remember. Let's go take a look at that. See if that works. Wait, did I change? Yeah, that was selected. Yeah, so it's not quite where I want it there. Once this gets smaller, then it gets to be the right spot. So, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's only going to be a little bit off on a really wide screen, which shouldn't be too big of a problem. And I might be able to fix it by making this 8 vmin and making this 8 vmin, and then get rid of this and then making this 0.8 vmin. This might fix the problem. We'll see. Whoops. Alright, so it's still showing the right size. Here we go. So I make this bigger. Oh yeah, it doesn't, it's only that big and it won't get bigger. But, you know, that does, you know, it does work. So, and that's probably a more consistent. So maybe we should, it's certainly simpler. So, remember, vmin refers to the whatever the minimum size of the viewport is. Okay, the viewport is the space between right here and the space into here, and then also top to bottom here and here. So whether height or width is smaller, that's vmin. So whichever the smaller of the height or the width is the vmin. So right now, if you can see the pixel sizes up here as I change the viewport size, and the first one is the width. You can see it's changing. The height is not changing, right? So right now, height is vmin, and that's why the board isn't actually changing size. It's moving, but it's not changing size. But suddenly, when the width gets less, okay, you can see the board start to shrink. Okay, so that seems to work relatively well. So we haven't fiddled with this in a while, but it looks like I might be able to do maybe even 10 vmin. I don't know. That might give me a board that's a little bit bigger. There we go, a little bigger. Fills up more of the viewport. And, oh, well, I didn't change my selected to reflect the fact that I changed that to 10 vmin. So this would be 1. 10% of 10 is 1, so 1 vmin. So I'll have a slightly bigger board, and it should be a little more consistent. So there we go, fills the whole space. And when I get to be too big, it should not go over the edges, and it doesn't. Okay, so yeah, so but it also fits when I go really, really small still. So small, it works. As big as possible, it works. So there you go. Those are the changes that I made. I can get rid of this checker wrapper because I don't have that anymore. So I changed the way it's selected was. I basically removed the margin around the checker, and I added a border, and basically I add the border so that or I remove the margin so I can add the border without, because more border and margin both have to be accounted for. So I'm basically replacing my margin with border, okay? And then I need to add no repeat. And the reason I have to add no repeat is because I have a translucent cell, okay? So the if I had or translucent border, if I had a solid color border, then I wouldn't need this no repeat. The background would repeat, but it would be repeating, but with a solid color covering it, so it wouldn't really matter. Nevertheless, it's not a bad idea to use no repeat for your backgrounds. So, all right. Well, listen. I hope that was helpful for you guys. So like I said, Monday I'd like you guys to have checker selecting fully implemented and looking nice. In addition, I'd like for you to be able to move a checker from one space to another, which I currently have turned off. So, all right. Well, that is pretty much it. Have a great weekend.